So it's our great pleasure today to be with Dan Chapman, Chaplain Dan Chapman. And Dan lives in Early, Texas for the last 29 years, he and his wife Dolores. And I invited him to come today and talk to our PCG family about his experiences as a chaplain over the years. So Dan, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your life and your ministry to come and to share with our PCG family. We want to honor the service that you've rendered to many, and I would like to really know more about it. So if you're game, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Certainly, it's really a pleasure to be here today, and this has been my heart for 32 years now as a chaplain for the Broward Police Department and Texas Department of Public Safety, and serving other law enforcement agencies over the years. And it's been a goal of mine just to make a difference for law enforcement personnel, and the police ministry sometimes is misunderstood in a lot of ways, and because the first thing people say, well, you just don't want to be, you just want to be a police officer, and even though I dress, look like a police officer, and but God has certainly opened that door and blessed us where a lot of other guys didn't have the opportunities that we've had in that crossing the thin blue line.
Right.
So thank you for inviting us today.
Yes, our pleasure. Well, let me just start with this. How long have you been credentialed with the Pentecostal Church of God?
Since 1964, as a license carryover from the previous organization, and then in 1967 I became ordained. And
Okay. Tell me, why was it that you decided to become Pentecostal Church of God as a minister?
Oh my goodness, this has been our family has been Pentecostal Church of God for, oh my goodness, many years. And my dad was a charter member of the local church in Brownwood, and but we have a long history, even though he wasn't a minister. And but we have a long history with the Pentecostal Church of God. Pentecostal Church of God has been very good to us. It's fed my family for over 50 years, and I have nothing but high accolades.
So besides being a law enforcement and a police chaplain, you have simultaneously been a minister with churches in the Pentecostal Church of God?
Oh yeah, we were evangelists for 5 years, traveling the nation, and I always said I'll never pastor a church. And we were booked 18 months in advance when we were appointed to the church where we served for 29 years.
Okay. And that is in Briarwood? Early. Okay.
Early, just across the river from Brownwood.
Okay.
That's the only dividing line.
So currently we have hospital chaplains, we have hospice chaplains, VA chaplains, military chaplains, prison chaplains, community service chaplains. As a law enforcement chaplain, that would be what you would consider your main vocation?
Well, I guess you'd call it that. It was a non-paid
right
position, certainly volunteer. But we were pastoring at the same time that we were serving as police chaplain as well. And
now, did the organization that you ended up serving in, did they offer training to you to do the job that you've done for these many years?
Well, what happened was that the police chief, who was very proactive, we were one of the few organizations in Texas that he wanted us to be a model department, basically, and we ended up being one of the 6 departments in Texas that was trained and doing the things that we were doing. And before we ever hit the street, we did 6 months of training before we ever began to move into that particular ministry. And he wanted to make sure that we knew enough about, even though we were green law enforcement, we had no idea, what to expect.
Right.
We knew it was a dangerous situation. We knew that. But we knew that going in. It was a very dangerous situation. And because anytime you're in a patrol car and you're out with that officer, it doesn't matter. And at that time, we were dressed a little different than the officers. And we've gotten into some situations where and when you have barricaded subjects and things like that, where they can see, and we may not be able to see them, but they can see us, and they always thought, well, the guy that's dressed different, he's a supervisor, and they're going to take that guy out first. So it wasn't long until we got into situations in the bright moonlight night, and I couldn't find a tree big enough to get behind because of the wide shirt. And the assistant police chief came in at that night, that's what the deal is, and he said, Padre, why don't you just put a bullseye on the back of your shirt? I said, thanks, Chief. I really appreciate the encouragement. Well, the next day we had full uniforms, and that's been that way ever since.
So now you mentioned we a couple times. Was there more than one?
Yeah, there were 13 of us.
13 in one police department?
Yeah, and a very small department at that, and but they didn't last.
Okay.
It doesn't take long to weed out people that the first suicide, the first baby death, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they said, this is not my calling.
Well, you hit a very interesting word. You do believe that it is a calling.
Oh, absolutely. Not everybody can do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just like the military chaplains. Not everybody can do that.
Right, right. So describe for me what you would consider some of the most enjoyable parts of the ministry.
Well, those are very few and far between. That enjoyable part of that police category. One night, me and my buddy was blacked out on the side street behind a convenience store, and we saw these guys come out of the convenience store on bicycles, and we had the windows down in the patrol car, and they rode by on a bicycle, and they said, well, hi, guys. And the officer said, hi. And they took off, and he turned around and started up, and he said, hey, we got to go get those guys. I said, let's go. He said, there's one of them, and I mean, they covered a lot of territory on those bicycles in a few minutes, and we finally found him. And he said, Padre, I want you to meet Michael. And so we pulled him over, and he got off his bicycle. And I said, hi, Michael. How you doing? He said, well, I'm fine, officer. How are you? And we talked for a few minutes, and I said, do you need to talk to me about some things tonight? And he said, well, I've been on meth since I was 12 years old, and I've been just all by my family. I have no place to stay. I don't have anything except this backpack. And I said, well, can I look in your backpack? He said, yeah. And I opened up the backpack, and there was about a 3-pound roast that he had stolen from the grocery store, and it was almost turning black. I said, well, how are you going to cook this meat? He said, well, there's a roadside park on the other side of town. I would build me a fire in that little fireplace thing. I talked to him, and I said, can I look at some other things in your backpack? Yeah. And there was a crumpled up shirt and a pair of socks and a pair of underwear, and that was it. And I said, well, where did you go to church? He said, what do you mean? Do you have a church family? And he said, no. I've never been to church. I said, do you know Jesus? I don't know who you're talking about. And so we talked for a little bit, and I said, would you like me to pray for you? He said, yes, sir. Would you pray for me? And I said, before I pray, is there anything you need to tell me? He said, yes, sir. The doctor's given me 6 months to live. And he's 30 years old. And so my officer buddy, he's a great guy. He's like a brother. And I saw tears come in his eyes, and I said, Michael, would you like to receive the Lord tonight? Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, yes, sir. And we prayed, and I said, if you need anything, Michael, you call me. I got back in the patrol car, and the officer said, what do you think? I said, don't touch him. He's got hepatitis. A week later, I get a phone call from the sheriff's office and said, you need to get down here and talk to Michael. He was tattooed up, and he said, walked in there, and he's smiling and sat down. I just need to talk to you a little bit, Padre, and I just need to know, would it be possible if you get me a Bible? I said, yes, sir, I can do that. He said, would you go to Walmart and get me some number 2 glasses so I can read? And I said, we can get that done too. So I got them, took them down there, and 2 weeks later, get another phone call and said, you need to get down there and talk to Michael. I said, what's going on? And we walked in the interview room. The sheriff's deputy said, do you need me in the room? I said, no, I don't need you. And he had this smile on his face. He said, you know what? I found the neatest scripture in the Bible. And I said, well, tell me about it. He said, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. The 91st Psalm. I get up of a morning and I read the 91st Psalm. I read it at lunch and I read it at night. I said, wow. And a few weeks later said, I'm going to have surgery. And would you be at the hospital so to help me with the surgery? I said, we can do that. Well, to make a long story short, went back and they had arrested him. His girlfriend had stolen the car, and he was with them, and that's the reason he was in jail. And he said, well, guess what? I got 2 years. I said, you what? I said, that's not right. And he said, well, let me tell you the rest of the story. He said, the judge said, I'm not taking that plea bargain, not for a minute. He said, I'll give you a year. I'm just going to cut that plea bargain in half. And he looked over and he said, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I said, you don't have much ambition. But anyway, that's one of the good stories that you have. There's times where you have race situations where you have, we've been called to intervene in and have 50-something people out in the middle of the street ready to have some real serious situations develop. Now, I was listening to the radio, and the third time that officer was called over, and I called him on the radio, and I said, do you need me over there? And he said, get over here now. I got over there, and this single black lady had 5 children, and they lived across the street, the older family across the street, were sitting on the porch, and they took some cat litter and missed the dumpster, and they was laughing about it, and this black gal thought they was making fun of them. And we was fixing to have some situations develop from that, and got both of them out there in the middle of the street, was talking, and here we had all these other people around us. I mean, bristling up, and so. And I said to the black lady, I said, where do you go to church? And she said, well, we were going over to this church over here, but they didn't like the way my kids were dressed and asked us not to come back. And the older family, he was a recovering alcoholic, and I said, what about y'all? He said, well, we've gone over there, but they don't want us. And I led both of those families to the Lord in the middle of the street at 9 o'clock at night, and the crowd and I had everybody just join hands, and we just prayed.
Wonderful.
Those are the good things that happen, but there's a lot more bad things that offset the good.
Yeah, tell me a couple of the stressful situations you had previously mentioned about suicide and the death of children. What do you feel were some of the most stressful issues that you had to face?
Well, if you notice, my badge doesn't say chaplain. My badge says negotiator. And we got a call where a subject was out on a farm market road with a .38 pistol to his head. And we arrived out there with the sheriff's officers and stuff, with the SWAT team with their AR-15s pointed at us, and I'm negotiating with the guy, the driver, with a pistol. And I knew the man. And we talked on there for a while, and I just finally had a SWAT guy on this side on the ground, one on the other side, just waiting for me to give the signal. It's not a warm, fuzzy feeling when you've got two AR-15s pointed at you, and knowing that if he pulls that trigger, it's not going to be a good outcome. And so the stressful part of that is here you have a life that's weighing in the balance because of family violence situations, and so I finally called him my name, and I said, why don't you just give me the magazine out of that pistol? Because I was really taking a chance at this point, because the older semi-automatics, if you took the magazine out, you disable the gun. So I was taking a chance with that, and then she said, okay, handed it to me. But she said, I still got one in the chamber. I said, well, I understand that. I said, you know what? If you just unlock these doors and let me in, we'll go to Whataburger and talk this thing over. And he said, okay, and I didn't grab it quick enough when I did that. That was the signal. They took the window down and had the guy. And they come over to me, and the officer said, boy, you sure was feeding him a line tonight? And I said, no, I didn't. I said, take the gun over at the fence over and pull the trigger. See? Well, the smile was on the other side of their face because we disabled the gun, and with that. But that was, and Bishop, in 32 years, God has honored us that I did not lose one person to suicide that we had intervention with, or one. And I give God the glory for that, because it's been some horrible situations.
Now, did you receive training from the police department for the negotiation, or was that through some other agency that you?
Well, they sent me to FBI school to be a trained hostage negotiator.
They did?
Yeah.
So they paid for all of that?
Yeah.
Now, did you have assistants that worked with you, or were you a solo chaplain?
I'm solo, unless situations where we had a bus accident with a school bus with 40-something kids on there, and so they were coming in, and I finally had to call some other crowd control, and parents, we didn't lose any of the children, but we had injured children, and when some 40-something children, so you can see how many people you had out of that was really traumatized by what could have been.
Have you ever had to conduct like a group debriefing?
Oh, yes,
like
sir.
That?
Yes, sir. That's one of the things that that was one of the prerequisites to go to the World Trade Center. You had to have the advanced training for critical incident stress management and debriefing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I have conducted numerous debriefings with the Texas Department of Public Safety psychiatrist.
So tell me about the World Trade Center. How did you get to ground zero, and what did you feel like? Was there an incident commander that you had to report to?
Yes,
were you called to go there, or
yes,
did you were called?
You could not self-deploy.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a member of the International Conference of Police Chaplains now for over 30 years. And I was one of 6 from Texas that had the advanced credentials to go to the World Trade Center. That is probably one of the most horrible things in my lifetime that I've ever witnessed or been through.
Mm-hmm.
The World Trade Center was a lot of things that people don't know about that happened. And when I got with the International Conference of Police Chaplains called me and asked me if we would go, and we would have to pay our own way. Mm-hmm. Well, Bishop Redding at that time, who was bishop here, found out about it, and he called me. And he said, we of the Pentecostal Church of God want to have a part in you going to New York. Mm-hmm. And so in order to go to New York, it was quite expensive. And there's a lot of stories with that.
How long were you at the Trade Center?
2.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. I was one of the few that was invited to come back.
You mean after the 2.5 weeks or during that?
No,
time?
I went. The first time I went was for 10 days, and the commander, the incident commander, who was over all of the first responders, he really didn't want any chaplains there. He was a rough guy from New Jersey, retired fireman, and incident commander, and so we had. At that point, we were working 12-hour shifts, and we had about 22, 24 people there at that particular time. And our job was to go back in, and we could not do debriefings. We could only do diffusings. Our job was to get those police officers functioning back
into the fight,
back in the mess. You can't imagine the smoke, the smell was horrible. 3,000 people down. And to see posters by the thousands on posts and telephone poles, have you seen my mother? Have you seen my sister? Have you seen my daddy? Have you seen my brother? The average age of the people that died in the World Trade Center were young financiers, and the average age was 42. We've already, up to this day, we've lost more firemen, police officers, first responders that have died from cancer that died in the World Trade Center, the crash. Every day I get another notice where someone's passed away. And so with that being said, you think you are prepared for these type of things. Well, we already had the Luby massacre in Killeen, where the man going in shot 20-some people and killed them. Oklahoma blast there, where we thought that we had a handle on it, and that's where we found out that the dogs went into grief syndrome. And while I was there, we lost 4 dogs while we were there in World Trade Center. As I arrived that night and walked into the main entrance, there was that cross, and you've seen that cross, and it had somebody had taken a felt tip mark and wrote the names of all the police officers and the firemen and the Port Authority people. And to hear the sounds of 15 huge cranes working. And I'm still in my dress clothes. When I got there, the commander said, we need to get out there tonight. And that was Sunday. I just got off the plane. He said, we got to go. And I was standing in front of the fire chief's tent. And I felt somebody tap me on the shoulder, and he looked at me and he said, I had the white hat that says chaplain on it. He said, I need you on the pile. We just found some body parts, and I need you to go pray over them. And I thought, God, what in the world can I pray? I'm over my head. I don't know what to do. I'm holding the flashlight, and we have 25 people with me, firemen, police officers, and they with the little guard tools working around. And I'm holding the light, and the chief said, all that equipment started shutting down. And he looked over at me and he said, it's time to pray. I thought, oh boy. Green smoke, yellow smoke coming out of the ground, temperature over 1,000 degrees. Water by the gallons and gallons of water they weren't trying to put it out. They couldn't because it was underground, railroads and stuff under there. And the first thing out of my mouth, I said, Lord, you never created anybody that you didn't know about or cared about. And I prayed, and I said, I don't know if I made them honorable Christians or honorary Christians or what, I don't know. But right there began that tour. And so he came to me, and he just didn't want any guys there for some reason. He said to me, Dr. Chapman, would you come back? Well, yes, if you want me to. I'll see if I can get some money together and come back. And he said, well, I want you to come back. And he was a chain smoker, rough talking. People don't realize how it can be, but it was. And I came back, he was a different guy. And at this time, it was right after Thanksgiving. And he said, and there was a lady that was a fire dispatcher from Montana, and she wanted to work with me. And so St. Paul's Chapel is the original church in Manhattan where George Washington went to church. And they had made it for a reception center and hot chocolate stuff, and barricades and people by the thousands, and they wanted us to wear the clerical collars there for a while. And so this gal said, let's go get some hot chocolate. Well, we had to go through the barricades. And when I went through there, the officer opened the gate for me. And the lady in her 80s reached out, and she touched me, and she said, would you bless me, Father? And I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds. And you could hear, there was a men in our choir saying, oh, come all you faithful. And so we went in there and got us some chocolate, went back out, and then I said, I told her, I said, let's just go down this barricade and walk back to our vehicles. And I'm walking by, and people reach out and just want to touch you. I mean, right. It was horrible. And people by thousands, and I'd reach them out, take them by the hand, and I said, God loves you. God cares about you. Went on, right? And the lady said, sir, would you mind if my 2 teenage daughters had their picture made with you? And I said, no, come on. And I pulled the barricade back and took pictures, and a lot of people were taking pictures, and went on down campaign style down the fence. And got back to headquarters, and she said to Roland, who was the incident commander, she said, "Well, you should have been with us today." And he said, "Why?" "Well, you all seen Dr. Chapman, what he's doing today." And he said, "Now what's he done?" And she said, "He's running for Pope." Campaigning.
Well, let me ask you, with the different things that you've been involved with, both the joys and the challenges, if you were going to advise a young, eager person that wants to serve as a chaplain, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say to him what I would say to a young person that wanted to be a police officer. A lot of people don't understand the environment of law enforcement. They don't understand that law enforcement is almost like military in one respect. And there's times the guy says, "I want to be a police officer," and he has no clue. And he goes to the academy. And he goes and he passed the academy. And he's out under field supervisor for a while. And he said, I've had him come to me and said, "I thought I could help people. That's the reason I want to be a police officer. I could help people." And it's not working out. And they don't make probation. They're gone because they didn't have a clue. And one of the first things I would say to you or Spencer or anybody else, go and meet the chief and ask for a ride along. Just go ride out for a couple of nights. Just get an idea what these guys are going through. Get an idea of what you're observing family violence calls or abuse of children. Not everybody can do this. It's a God-called thing, and a lot of people will misunderstand you while you're doing it. But you want to make a difference, and you have there's 95% of the people that you deal with don't even go to church anywhere. They don't even know anything about God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've enjoyed being in this position as executive director for PCG for Chaplain, civilian chaplain ministry, is I wanted to make a difference. I want people out there, you can touch people that nobody else can.
Exactly.
And you see the worst of the worst. There's things in my memory today that my wife don't even know about. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to bring that stuff home to her.
Well, that was another question that I wanted to ask you. It seems that there are some issues that could cause a lot of mental health situations for the caregiver. How do you care for yourself after you've been out in the field and you've witnessed and been a part of horrible incidents?
I've always said, who's got your ear? Who you're listening to, in counseling. And there are very few people that you can talk to empty out that garbage bag, mm-hmm. so to speak. And that's the problem why you have police officers in the 5th year that are already in burnout. It's because they can't talk to anybody of their peers because they're afraid of what they would respond with to their particular problem. That's why the average law enforcement marriage is 5 years. And there's these guys, that's why they call it the thin blue line. Very few people can break that, do that. And God has helped us to do that. And those guys that's around the police department treat me like a brother. If they get ready to go to serve a warrant, they would say, Father, let's go. They don't say, you want to go, let's go. And there's times it's just me and the officer. And we go knowing that we're outnumbered. Well, we get there. He said, I got to have you there. He said, I know that God is going to protect us and God's going to be with us. When you have a police chief that comes and said, would you like to have a Bible study in the courtroom? Because just like when I started, and one of the things there, they'll set you up. They will find out if you're a student for the chief or not. And they'll say, well, I have this friend that has this problem. Mm-hmm. And you know immediately who that friend is, and you treat it like that. And it's just amazing the opportunities that God given us. I've been very blessed to have that door open to me there that a lot of other guys never had.
Now, when did you actually start training other PCG ministers to do the chaplain?
2007. This really was, Dr. Wilson was one of the first that had been talking to me, and I was on the general board at that time. And then Brother Hunt came along, and he said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And I said, well, we can do it. This has been something I've been wanting to do for a long time on a national level.
And how long did you do training seminars?
I've been doing them since 2007.
Okay. And just tell me a few of the places, locations that you've been to.
Tennessee, Florida, New Mexico, Texas, Arkansas.
And these would be a weekend type of training?
15-hour certification program, which deals with everything from death notification to suicidal, child abuse, drug seminar, confidentiality, counseling, ethics.
And the material that you used, was that material that the ICPC provided?
Well, it's my own material. Now, I am a certified instructor with them, but the new stuff, we cannot do that unless we're in their particular environment. I can use their new stuff in that environment.
So if they're coming to training for ICPC, you can use
or the police department. I can do that, but they have to be notified that I'm going to be doing that training at a police department somewhere. And that's the reason I'm the South Texas representative for the International Conference of Police Chaplains. That's my job, to go and set up police departments, set up protocols, and all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. But in the local churches, you wouldn't use their material?
No, I would not.
You'd use your own material that you've come across. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, Dr. Chapman, it certainly has been my honor and privilege to talk with you, and I want to thank you so much for your service to the Lord and service to the community. I'm under the belief that really only eternity will really tell the extent of the ministry that we sometimes do. So with God's help, I pray that you have more experiences and more opportunities to share your story and to share the teaching and the service that God has called you to.
I would like to certainly see it advance some of the things that we've already done, to see an advanced program on top of that 15-hour certification program. They receive a certificate of completion not endorsement, when they finished that program.
Right.
And I'm just thankful that you've allowed me to be a part of that. And I love doing it. It's my heart. And to see the difference.
Yes.
So I had a police officer one time ask me, said, why don't God love us? Why is it God hates police officers? And you have that opportunity to
minister to them.
not preach.
Right.
That's the reason some of the other guys went by very quickly. You don't preach to these people.
Yeah.
My policy's been if they ask a question, then you belong to me. I'll share that with you.
Well, sir,
God bless you. Thank you, sir.
Amen.